Hello, welcome to Grief is Real, Big, Better Shared. It's December, the holidays are here. Not feeling so merry and bright? That's okay, you're grieving, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm Kevin Lee, President and CEO of Mid-America Transplant, and we are honored to sponsor this episode of Grief is Real, Big, Better Shared. At Mid-America Transplant, we have the privilege of working with families across southern Missouri and northeast Arkansas who make the heroic decision to donate their loved ones' organs or tissues. While donation often brings families comfort, they are still heartbroken by their loss. We are driven by compassion for these families and continue to walk with them through their grief journey. Mid-America Transplant provides several programs to help families memorialize their loved one, but we believe that some of the best support can be provided by a grief center. We are proud to work with the Center for Good Grief and appreciate everything they are doing in the region to bring healing to people who are coping with loss. Mid-America Transplant is inspired by life and by the donor families who give transplant patients a second chance at life. For more information about being a donor, visit sayyesgivelife.org.
So joining me today is one of our grief counselors, Maria. Welcome, Maria. Thanks for being here today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
So we know the holidays are coming.
Yes.
And we know that there are things that can help grievers, especially the grievers who are not quite feeling so merry and bright right now, which is totally understandable. It can feel foreign. It can feel unpleasant, which I think is something that a lot of grievers are kind of surprised by. But we know that not everyone is feeling so merry and bright. And so we want to take some time to talk about that and to talk about things that can help them navigate the holiday season and cope. And we know that we're not always feeling so merry and bright because as grievers, our bodies are also grieving. You know, we always say that we grieve in 5 ways. And I think sometimes we forget that the body experiences grief as well, therefore making us not feel so merry and bright.
Of course. It's so often overlooked. I think it's so easy to attribute bodily reactions to other things and to not give ourselves as much grace because of that, because we're not aligning it to our grief. We think, I just must be tired because I'm dealing with XYZ. But it's also a grief reaction. Grief is not just sadness and tears. It is those 5 ways you talked about. And we want to spend some time with those physical ways because they're so overlooked.
Yes, absolutely. I think what you said, people try to minimize it or write it off. You know, they're already dealing with so much with their grief, so many secondary losses, and then here come the holidays. And when you're not grieving, the holidays can suck the energy out of you. And so I think that's the first step, is realizing that this body is grieving as well, and that it impacts then our emotions, our brain gets all involved, and how we're coping and how we're approaching this holly jolly season.
Completely. And I think that so often it's easy to overlook the ways that those physical reactions can affect our ability to, whether it's plan the holidays or enjoy the holidays or all of the things, because we're not feeling so merry and bright, right? And we know something as simple as not getting enough sleep can impact how we think about the next day, how we're feeling the next day. And that's just our sleep, let alone our eating being impacted, our ability to feel well rested being impacted, headaches, tummy aches, all of these things are going to impact our ability to do day-to-day things, let alone everything that comes with the holidays.
Right. The holidays, I mean, you mentioned what we eat. The foods typically surrounding us are heavier foods, richer foods, foods that, are going to make our bodies feel, sluggish in addition to the grief.
Right, exactly. So that's why it's so important to be paying attention to all of the ways we can care for our whole selves during the holiday season, which I know we're going to touch on a little bit more later.
Absolutely. And then that brain gets involved, like we said. How do you see that?
Well, of course. So what I think about the brain, I think about how it's trying to do what it does best. It's just trying to make sense of stuff, and it's just trying to keep us safe and trying to keep us comfortable. But as a result, it ends up kind of blocking our heart from feeling the things that it needs to feel, especially in our grief. So often our head is running ahead of our heart in one of two ways. It's either rushing us towards trying to accept things when we aren't ready to accept them, or encouraging us to avoid our grief because it's too painful. So, our head runs ahead saying, my loved one's gone, and I know that for a fact that they're not on here. They're not here on earth with me. So I shouldn't feel badly. I should be able to accept this and do the holidays like I always have.
I love how you said the brain's going to do what the brain does. And that's right. And I don't know, I don't think I beat up on the brain, but sometimes I'm like, with grief, like just constantly talking to people about finding the balance between the head and the heart.
Yes.
But that brain is there for a reason. And it is. I love how you said that. It's trying to help us make sense. Sometimes it is kind of rushing us maybe, but that's what it knows to do. It's just trying to find the pieces to put together to help us understand how we're feeling this way. But the problem is the brain can't do it alone. It needs that heart piece, especially when it comes to grief. But that's another reason why we may not be feeling so merry and bright, because there's brain exhaustion from thinking, especially if we're staying in the brain and not going into the heart. And that brain can't find all the answers itself. And so it can get really exhausted, stressed, worn out, and leaving us almost kind of feeling helpless.
Completely. And I feel like so much energy is expended just fighting our brains. Half of the battle is the battle we have against ourselves. So it's so hard to put down that struggle and allow ourselves to experience whatever the mind has for us, but also whatever the heart has for us. And it seems so counterintuitive that putting that down is actually going to save us some energy.
Right. It does. It does. And especially if you're early in your grief, if this is your first holiday season, a lot of times people will say, okay, the holidays are here. I know this is going to be hard, but I'm just going to, plow through it. And that sometimes is going to, not be very helpful to us, because the body and the brain can only do so much. And so what we hear from people is, I really tried that, but I ended up, kind of on the floor in a puddle because I just couldn't do it, because the body said, that's it. I have nothing else to give you.
Right. And then when the body is already depleted, then we have our brain on top of it saying, but it's the holidays, but you need to pick this up and keep going, and trying to draw from an empty well.
Right. Right. That brain says, this is how we've always done it. Or sometimes we hear from clients, this is what you should do. They get a lot of shoulds at the holidays. We should feel merry and bright. We should continue with the traditions. But if the body doesn't have the energy or the capacity, it becomes a vicious cycle for the griever.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And on top of that, I just know that we talked about how the body grieves, but also there are other ways the brain grieves other than the brain doing what the brain does, right? The brain might be more occupied with just memories of past holidays, and that takes up energy and space. Even though it can be pleasant, it can also be really difficult at the same time. We hear from a lot of people there's a bittersweetness to that, and there can even be an exhaustion just from the reminiscing and the remembering of the way that all the holidays in the past have gone.
Yes. I had a client once tell me that they came up with their plan. They were going to put their tree up, but when they started putting the tree up, every ornament triggered a story and memories. And even though it was wonderful and the family was really grateful because they were all together, but it took hours longer than they had expected. They thought, let's just sort of check the box. We'll get the tree, we'll throw it up, and then we'll move on to the next thing. And they were there for hours telling stories, reminiscing. That all brought the tears. And it was still good. They still felt that it was good, but they had no capacity to do anything else that day. And that day they kind of had like 4 or 5 boxes they planned on checking.
Right.
And the tree took the day, and it took the time, but it took all the energy.
Right, definitely. And I think that's why it's so important to give ourselves grace. Even if our mind is telling us, oh, you should have checked all 4 of those boxes this day. You ended up spending so many hours unpacking the Christmas tree. But to tell ourselves, this is what I have. I'm working with less bandwidth.
Yes.
My body is more tired. My mind is more tired. I'm feeling a little bit more sensitive. it can be hard to adjust that schedule.
Yes, and that same family, several family members were, really beating up on themselves. But there were a couple of others that said, "But y'all look, we put the tree up." And so, that ability to look at it that way, like, okay, we didn't do the mantle and, all the things, but we put the tree up. And so again, during the holidays and we're not feeling so merry and bright, sometimes the wins are going to look a little different, but it's still a win.
Definitely. And it's okay to give ourselves a pat on the back for those, even if it doesn't feel like, well, in past years, I was able to put up 3 trees
Right.
and all over my house.
Right.
That's okay. That the expectations are different this year. This is going to be a different year.
Because we're grieving, we're missing someone so important to us. Their physical presence, their emotional presence, the way that they maybe contributed to the holidays and to the joy, all of that is missing. And so it is very different. And again, maybe why we're not feeling so merry and bright. And so that brings up other emotions. We talked about how we physically grieve and the way our brain grieves, but also there's so many other feelings other than merry and bright, happiness. Grievers experience a wide variety of feelings and sometimes many feelings within the same day, many feelings, just minutes apart, which is complicated sometimes or confusing of how am I feeling all these different feelings. But I think we know, Maria, when most people think of grief, they think of sad. So yes, sadness is here.
Or they think of those 5 stages, thinking that everything should progress in an orderly fashion, that we should be able to check off and manage and wrangle with our minds, right? But we know, just like you said, we can experience all 5 of those stages and so much more within a few minutes.
Yes, absolutely. We wish grief was orderly and predictable. It'd make our job easier. It'd make grief easier, but it's just not. Grief is so messy.
Yes.
And full of so many different emotions. Numbness. I don't think numbness and shock get talked about enough. They are hard feelings, but I am so grateful that we have them. They really carry us through our first few days and weeks and months of grief. They help us put that one foot in front of the other. And that feeling, those emotions do serve a purpose. They're not pleasant. Again, they're not as fun as merry and bright, but they do serve a purpose in helping us cope and adjust to our new reality.
Definitely. And I love how you talk about how these things are normal and natural and actually necessary as part of our journey, that, this is part of the whole realm of human experience that serves a purpose, that merry and bright serves a purpose, sure, but also numbness and shock. And the grief process in and of itself is the way that our hearts and our minds process all of this, even though it is so uncomfortable and it can be so messy and unpredictable. Having the faith that our hearts and our minds know the way through this. These are natural ways to get through.
And we've said uncomfortable now several times. And I think that's the flip side of the merry and bright. When you're not feeling merry and bright, you're feeling all these other things. But basically, it's so much that's uncomfortable because it's new, it's different, it's hard.
Very much
Don't
so.
have a roadmap, the stages, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we're so used to the holidays being traditions and used to it being the same way possibly every year that we know what that rhythm looks like and we have our plans, but that can be so hard that even that is disrupted, that the order that we usually have during the holidays is now gone.
Absolutely. And so that brings maybe the emotion of anger, and anger is unpleasant for most people. People worry about what people might think about them if they are angry. People oftentimes get told that anger is a bad emotion. You're not supposed to feel that way. I know personally for me, when I get the stockings out every year, I have a surge of anger because I now have these 3 stockings that I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I want to hang them up, but also that feels uncomfortable. I don't know what to do with them. How is it going to make other people feel? And then sometimes I'm just flat out mad that I have these stockings, but I don't get to put anything in them anymore because stockings are a big deal in our family. So every year I wrestle with these stockings, and I will tell you the first feeling that comes is a surge of anger that this is the reality.
Right, that this isn't fair.
Right.
This wasn't the way it was supposed to be.
Right. Yeah, I want to protest every year, and I do. I sort of get them out, I put them somewhere, and then I get mad and I move them again, and because it's not the way it's supposed to be. And so, again, not so merry and bright,
Yes.
and then you can start judging yourself for having these other intense emotions. And here come the shoulds again. I shouldn't be feeling this way. This is supposed to be a happy time. I'm going to make other people uncomfortable if my true feelings show.
Right, and now here comes the guilt trip.
Yes, there you go. Right there on time. Here comes the guilt train. Yeah. So all that guilt, and then what that does to people, again, it's the shoulds. I should be doing this. This is supposed to be, time to continue memories and things like that. And so where do you see people fall with that guilt, and kind of how to recover from it, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so much of the guilt is laid, of course, on ourselves. So often guilt isn't something that we put upon ourselves because we have those shouldas, those couldas, those wouldas. And so often the way that we deal with it is by acknowledging it, that it's real, that it's a part of our grief, but combating it with compassion.
Yes.
And understanding towards ourselves.
Yes.
That this is not a typical year. This is not a normal holiday season, even if our brain is pushing us to say, no, make it the same as the other years. Everything's fine. Go according to those shoulds. No.
Right. Like if this is your first holiday season and you're listening to this podcast, telling yourself right now, this is hard. Okay. The first holiday season is hard. It's hard to navigate. Just that compassion, just through that sentence to yourself that, okay, this is hard and this is my reality and this is where I am. This is what I'm figuring out. And there's no roadmap. And so it's hard.
Right, exactly. And so often what can be helpful is trying to take back that microphone and that narrative that we're saying in our head.
Yes.
Because there's that automatic voice of, well, you should be decking the halls. You should have
Yes.
already, why didn't you stand in line for Black Friday?
Right.
It's like, no, that is not the case at all. It is so important to be able to give ourselves that grace and to flip the script, take back the microphone and talk to ourselves as we would someone else.
Yes.
With that kindness and that understanding. I so often say to clients, what would you say to your best friend?
It's so amazing how the first thing we normally say to ourselves is so ugly. Just going to say it out. It's just ugly. It's just mean. And like you said, if we asked ourselves what's the first thing we would say to a friend, it is compassion filled and understanding. But we don't do that to ourselves. And I think, again, if you're grieving and this is your first holiday season, really hear that. And I love how you said, take back the microphone and talk to yourself like you would a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, so we're talking about these emotions, but there is a place for other feelings too. Sometimes content, joy, those feelings can creep in too. Now, you may, if this is your first holiday season, you may say, nope, now, Angela Maria, you're losing me here. No. But sometimes it can. I've heard people say sometimes it's just in a quiet moment, maybe when you're just there and maybe it's the light from the trees. I've heard people say just a moment of content or a moment of peace in the midst of your grief. And sometimes, here comes the guilt trip again, if people experience a moment of contentment or joy, they'll think, oh no, I'm moving on. I'm forgetting them. I'm letting my grief go. I'm letting my love go. And that's just simply not the case. We, as people, are able to feel more than one emotion at a time. And if peace or content comes in, just sit there with that and take that as a moment of, this can also be connected to my grief. This can also be just connected to me in this moment.
Yes, definitely. And I so often hear, actually just had someone recently describe this as a muted joy. And sometimes that in and of itself feels wrong because it's like, why am I not having the big joy of the season, right? But allowing ourselves to just revel in and appreciate those moments we get that is a little bit of a respite from the tumultuous nature sometimes of our grief. And again, giving ourselves that compassion to have that, because it can so often feel like a betrayal, can feel wrong that we're allowing ourselves to feel that. That does not overwrite the love in your heart at all.
I've heard some adults say that they feel like children are better grievers, and in many ways they are. And
Yes.
this is another example of how kids can kind of go between the extremes of emotions, and they can hold joy and then also come back into sadness and anger and other feelings. And I think sometimes I'll use children as sort of a nice example that that's okay. It's okay that if we feel that. Now, as adults, we usually don't feel quite the extent of it, but when the peace or joy and, like with the little J start coming in, holding them and just letting it be the moment that it is.
Definitely. And I think children are such good grievers because they haven't overlaid all these expectations yet on themselves. We've put
Exactly.
so many expectations on ourselves, especially during the holiday seasons, of the way that things should be. But, maybe we can take a lesson from the littles and just know that maybe
Always.
it's always, always out of the mouths of babes,
That's
right?
right.
It's
That's right.
okay to take a page out of their book and say, let me just have these feelings. There's nothing wrong with this. This is the part of the normal, natural human experience of grief.
These are not the right feelings and these are the wrong feelings. They are just feelings.
And they're meant to be felt.
Yes, absolutely. So now we know kind of why we don't feel so merry and bright maybe right now because of our bodies and our brains and our emotions. What are some things that can help us during the holidays?
Yeah. Well, number one, allow yourself to feel whatever you need to feel. It is okay to feel sad, glad, mad, joyful, devastated. Whatever comes up, give yourself permission to feel those feelings. But also, expect to feel your grief. Sometimes people are surprised when it comes up in the midst of the holiday gathering and feel like, I thought that I got around this. It's okay. Expect to maybe have one of those waves. If you've listened to us before, we talk about these grief waves.
And we've talked about grief is hard on just a regular old Tuesday. And then you put in this special day with, memories and nostalgia and all the things. You're going to feel your grief.
Definitely. So how much more important is it to also have that grace and patience for ourselves, that compassion? But we also talk so often about the importance of a plan.
Yes.
So that is something that we can kind of take the reins on. So much in our grief is uncontrollable, but one thing that we can control is trying to just already lay the groundwork, because on the day, things might be feeling a little crazy. That wave might have turned you upside down. So making a plan for what you feel like is within your realm of control.
That plan, we cannot stress that enough. I've heard over the years so many people say that they felt like they survived because they had spent time working on a plan. And with that plan, we know that part of the plan is that the plan can change. You can throw it out the window if you need to. You can shift gears in the middle. That's why it's good to kind of have several different options and to really think through what feels right for this year only.
Yes, and I think that right there is the key. Underline that it's this year only. You don't need to build your whole new family tradition this year or the new way that the holidays are going to look forever and ever. We are just trying to get through this year, this discomfort.
And I think part of the plan, or I see that people who put memorialization into their plan really feel like they have coped and survived better. That does not mean you're having another funeral. It does not mean that, some people will say, I feel like if I do that, people think I'm just looking for attention. No, you're remembering someone who is very important who is not here. And acts of ritual and remembrance are so very helpful to our grief. It can be something as simple as lighting a candle. It can be a memorial ornament. There's so many different options of remembrance and memorialization that can really help people survive the holidays. Now, are they feeling merry and bright? Not so much usually, but they feel a connection, and that connection helps them as they navigate the minutes and the hours of the day.
Yes, completely. That connection, that continued bond with our loved one is so important, especially during the holidays where they may have played a large role. So it can be something small that only you know about, a special
right.
ornament on the tree, or it can be something that if you want it to be a greater part of your holiday time, that's totally fine too. Maybe it's an empty spot at the table, a special spot at the table for your loved one. Maybe it's making a paper chain all together where we write memories on each chain, and then now we have this physical representation of our bond and our link to our loved one. And it can be anything in between. It can be unique to you. It doesn't need to be something that, is exactly what you heard on the podcast from the Good Grief Center. No, it can be what is meaningful to you, your family, your loved one.
I'm so glad you mentioned the paper chain, because I feel like that's something that people hear and they think, oh, that's not for our family. But I am just going to say today on this podcast that I have never heard a family do it and regret it. I've heard such beautiful stories, and I think I've been just inspired by that, because it feels maybe sometimes a little like, oh, that might be too much, but it's literally strips of paper, a marker or crayon, and a stapler. And everyone writes something on a strip, and then they add it and they make this chain. I have heard families who then put it on the chair to represent, the person who would normally be here at the table. I've had families put it on the tree as like the garland and decoration, and just the joy that it has brought families. Again, what they're doing is they're addressing the elephant in the room. Everyone is grieving. Everyone's thinking about this person and missing them. And so it usually just takes one person to be a little bit brave and bold to put it out there that we're going to do. But I have heard stories after stories of that bringing joy to families and on a really hard day. But they found that little emotion of joy shining through just a little bit through all of the other feelings and the pain and the sorrow.
Yes, and in the midst of so much discomfort, finding a little bit of comfort in this moment to pause and connect. There can be comfort in something that maybe did seem a little bit intimidating at first.
And I think it usually just takes someone, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Who's going to be the brave, bold one? Oftentimes it's children and families. I've had teenagers be the one who say, like, nobody's going to mention them. We'll work with kids and teens on holiday plans too. And I've said to teenagers well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to light a candle, and they'll do it. And I've heard, well, I did it. Some families, that went really well. I had a teen one time say, I lit the candle, we said the prayer, and everyone just still went on like, they just, life was normal. And that teenager was able to realize that the adults were really struggling, but he did what he needed to do. And really for that family, it started the conversation. It took them another holiday season to really get there. But again, his bravery fulfilled the need he had, and it started some conversations in the family. It took a year to get there, but it started.
Yes, just like we were saying before, this does not need to be the plan. It can be a work in progress if it's just a jumping off point for this time.
Right.
That's okay.
Right. And again, we're not feeling merry and bright. Probably nobody else in the family is. So kind of acknowledging that, coming up with a plan, talking about it. It's important to share that. Again, family members can be in all different places. So just because this is where I am, this may not be where, another family member is. So we have to kind of acknowledge that as well.
Yes, but I think, it's also so important to acknowledge that just like it is in our podcast, like we say, grief is better shared. And it can be a little scary to be vulnerable and to talk with our family members about how we're feeling. But we know that communication piece is so important because we can't read each other's minds.
Right. And that fear, I know this is what we've been mentioning several times, but I was just thinking about a client who we were working on her holiday plan once, and she just said, this is going to freak everyone out, and everyone's going to think I've lost my mind, because she wanted to do candle lighting. She said, they're all going to think that grief counseling has made me, worse. And it's because of the avoidance factor.
Yes.
So in the family. And I think we have to take that into play, that maybe what you need to do, who can you do that with? Who do you need to do that with? Who's it going to be harder for? That's where it just gets really complicated sometimes too within families.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So again, knowing who you can talk to, knowing who your support, who those people are. You may have to find your support outside your family since they're all, maybe intensely grieving as well. So is it friends? Is it a support group? That can be really helpful at the holidays is joining a support group of other people who are grieving to find that support, outside.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's so hard because we approach other people in our lives and they don't know how to help. And they're just kind of left wondering, what do I do, waiting in the wings? And when we're already having such a hard time, it can be hard to give people that explicit permission to talk about your loved one or to help you with different things during the holidays. We wish it wasn't that way, that we needed to be the one to make the first move. But sometimes people are just waiting for you to say, hey, come shopping with me.
Yes.
Hey, I need some help planning out my grocery list.
So yes, as the griever, we talk about this sometimes, like, why do I have to be the one? Well, people usually are out there wanting to help us, wanting to support, but they don't know how.
Exactly.
And so sometimes we do have to sort of let them know what could really help us right now. And I think too, just being honest. Hey, I'm not feeling so merry and bright. Hey, I listened to this podcast the other day that told me it was okay that I'm not feeling merry and bright. And let me just stress that right now. It is okay if you are not feeling merry and bright. You are grieving. Your life has changed. There is a whole new sense of normal that you are trying to figure out in the midst of a time that is just rooted in tradition and family. That's what makes this hard. So if you need to say, hey, I listened to this podcast, I'm apparently normal, that I'm not feeling merry and bright, but here's maybe what you could do to help me, or here's maybe something I need, that kind of thing. We find that people really want to know, how can I help you when you're grieving?
Yes, exactly. And it can be those more nuts and bolts things of getting help with, or maybe if you have a friend who is a little more tenderhearted and able to hold that space, maybe they're the ones who can do that little bit of a ritual or memorial for your loved one. Right.
So knowing your who, knowing your wins, knowing what you can do. There's so many different things that people have done. And again, it may be that this year it's something that you do that's for you. And maybe this is the year where you're going to do more with family. That's part of that, coming up with that plan that feels right to you and the others around you who are grieving as well.
Yes, definitely.
So as we're thinking about people who are grieving and maybe just not quite feeling it this year, what else do you think is maybe important for them to keep in mind?
I think it's really important to keep in mind accepting your limits this holiday season, to tackle things in bite-sized pieces, taking it a step at a time. Like we said earlier, it's so hard to be compassionate to ourselves on a normal day, let alone during the holidays. Just being patient with yourself and taking things step by step. I know I've said that about 2 or 3 times already, but it is just that important to give ourselves compassion during this time.
Yes. When you think about merry and bright, we all want to feel merry and bright. That's what you're supposed to feel. Coming back to those shoulds.
Yes.
Will you feel it again in the future?
There's a very high chance that you will.
Yes. So if you don't feel it this year, it's okay. It is totally okay. Give yourself permission just to be where you are, knowing that there is the potential that you will feel merry and bright again.
Yes.
Are you different? Are you forever changed because of your loss? Yes. But feelings change. Our bandwidth changes. Our ability to memorialize changes. So again, this year, it is okay to be wherever you are, feeling however you feel. Remember who you can reach out to. If you feel like you don't have someone immediately to reach out to, you can reach out to a counselor, to other trusted support people. Remember, those people are out there and want to help. And so please reach out and know that you are not alone this holiday season.
Definitely.
Maria, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners about the holidays and not feeling so merry and bright?
Just again to reiterate what you said, it is okay to not feel merry and bright. It's okay to not even be able to imagine feeling merry and bright again. It's okay to just be in this season. Sometimes we tell people to borrow our hope for now.
That's a great place to end, is borrow the hope from us today, borrow the hope from the grief centers. Again, we have a podcast called Grief is Real, Big, Better Shared for a reason. Holiday grief is so real, and it can be so, so big. But sharing it is the key for healing. And so remember that you are not alone. You are in a community of grievers, and it is important to reach out and to ask for what you need this holiday season as well.
Definitely.
Thanks so much, Maria.
Thank you.
Grief does heal. Let me say that again. Grief does heal. But like we've said, grief demands attention and care. It also needs support and patience. Remember that your grief is a reflection of your love. You are not alone. The world is full of many grievers like you. You can learn more about us at www.baptistgriefcenters.org. You can check out our YouTube channel, Baptist Centers for Good Grief. You can check out our podcast wherever you get your podcast. Also, know that you can reach out and let us know if there's a topic that you're interested in learning more about. You're welcome to email me at angela.kelly@bmhcc.org. That's angela.kelly@bmhcc.org. And remember, grief is real, big, better shared. We'll talk soon.